Lesson 3. Healing from Divorce. There are some events that are so emotionally and psychologically traumatic that healing emotionally can take a very long time. In fact, some traumatic events will never leave us. We can heal and move forward, but we are never quite the same. Divorce is among the hardest experiences to endure. Among the many reasons that divorce causes long-term emotional trauma, guilt, anger, and stress are hugely influential. Understanding that the loss of a spouse through divorce is a tremendously complex issue is key to being able to emotionally heal. Oftentimes, a divorce occurs because of emotional trauma within the marriage, whether by abuse, adultery, or other causes. So people anticipate that emotional healing will occur once they are out of the marriage and the emotional trauma they endured has ended. Unfortunately, ending emotional trauma in and of itself does not result in emotional healing. Changing your attitude or the situation, thereby ceasing the emotional trauma, is vital to clearing the pathway for emotional healing to occur. The healing itself, however, will take much more than just the trauma coming to an end. Guilt tends to be a very common problem for divorced individuals, especially those who decided to end the marriage and those with children. In almost every situation, divorce will radically change virtually every aspect of a person's life. Suddenly, there is a dramatic difference in income, and there may even be an increase in expenses for attorney fees, daycare, and other things such as counseling. Child care and raising children, along with now having to divvy up time with children, can create tremendous challenges. Even lifestyle changes, such as moving to a smaller home or apartment, can be difficult by themselves, much less the entire situation. But for many people, the biggest challenge of all is the loneliness and solitude that can often come with divorce. Making decisions and plans is now a one-person job. Deciding how to handle a problem with a child has become much more complex. Having to re-enter the workforce or pursue new employment is that much harder without someone to bounce ideas and opinions off of. All in all, even with great support, divorce can be a very lonely experience. Shame and guilt often tend to go hand in hand with divorce. Individuals who divorce because they fall in love with someone other than their spouse may make a conscious decision to pursue their new love, but still may feel very guilty over hurting someone they once loved very much. The spouse who was abandoned is often left with feelings of confusion, shame, and a need to understand what happened to their crumbling marriage. Many of the spouses find themselves believing that if they did something differently, their marriage would still be intact. Guilt and shame thus follow, especially when children are involved. Guilt is not always a bad thing. After all, a certain amount of guilt is what helps us do the right thing and develops our conscience. Sometimes guilt is what indicates to us that our actions and words may be wrong or callous. Unfortunately, guilt can also be developed from healthy and appropriate choices, or even from situations where the person feeling guilty had no choice at all. Sometimes religion, our families, and our roles, such as parent or caregiver, may stimulate an unhealthy increase in guilt. We may find ourselves feeling guilty simply because we are imperfect or limited. Our limitations and humanity sometimes create a pressing need to feel guilty over situations where we have no guilt. Too much guilt, or guilt over the wrong things, can cause extreme emotional harm. We end up beating ourselves up emotionally and mentally merely because we are human. How could we possibly begin to heal ourselves if we are still holding on to the idea that we caused or created a bad situation? The reality is that a lot of things happen through no real fault of anyone involved. Sometimes it is easy to look at a disintegrating marriage and blame one party or the other, especially in cases of abuse, addiction, or adultery. But in some respects, even these cases can be much more complex than they seem. And for those marriages that don't involve any of these issues, such as a marriage where spouses seem to grow apart or fall out of love, they are even less simplistic. Recognizing your limitations, the choices that you may need, and the results of those choices demonstrates a productive and healthy level of contemplation. If that contemplation stirs up some feelings of guilt, then that may be a healthy expression. Those feelings of guilt should then be able to be put away as the person realizes how to make better choices that are more in keeping with the person they want to be. But for someone who feeds their guilt with shame, constant regret, and impossible expectations, their guilt is out of control and emotionally dangerous. Obviously, hurt is also a tremendous consequence of divorce. Regardless of what caused the divorce, almost always both parties emerge hurt, and to some degree scarred emotionally. The very nature of working to form a life together, making plans for a future, and forming a family demands an investment of feeling. When the marriage does not work, all of those feelings you have invested feel as though they've become pointless. Often this can lead to feelings of foolishness or embarrassment. People may feel that their love, passion, and hope wasn't respected or appreciated by their spouse, and most of the time there is little a person can do to help alleviate their disappointment in what they perceive as a rejection of who they are. So what do you do with all of the shame, loneliness, and hurt? You heal. There is no aspect of emotional healing that is quick or easy. With divorce, there is not only all of the emotional damage from the destruction of a marriage to contend with, there are also other influences, such as family history or social pressure, that may increase or cause more emotional trauma. And unfortunately, there is no real way to get a third party to understand the factors that led to any particular disintegration of a marriage. One of the best things a person going through a divorce or having just gone through a divorce can do is to establish boundaries. Setting boundaries with their ex, setting boundaries with their children, setting boundaries with their extended family, and setting boundaries with their friends and social circle should all occur. But the most important boundaries that can be set by an individual going through divorce are the boundaries they make for themselves. For some people, that may mean they promise themselves not to make any late-night phone calls to their ex. For others, it may be limiting the amount of time you spend thinking about what you did wrong to 2 minutes and following it up with a self-affirming activity. Essentially, any boundary that will help you limit your feelings of hurt, guilt, shame, and loneliness should be helpful and healthy. Many of these limitations you will place on yourself, but others you will find must be extended to the people in your life that may also be generating these negative feelings within you.